Over the years, we've taken a look back at many things in the gaming world that have gone extinct, and the many problems gamers sometimes have. So today we're taking a further look back at 10 more gamer problems that are now dead. Starting off at number 10, let's talk about not owning a memory card. As you know, video games are expensive. They were expensive then, they're expensive now, and sometimes it meant you could get the game, but not the actual physical device you needed to save your progress on. You can end up in that camp for a variety of ways. You save up all your money to buy a video game console and one game, but not a little extra for a memory card, or maybe a relative got you a shiny new console for a gift, but forgot to include the memory card because they didn't know any better. Regardless, many of us were just stuck without a way to save. Now, coming from the older days, it was fine. There were password systems, or you just dealt with it. You remember maybe pausing your NES and leaving it on all day while you went to school, hoping that you would come home and the power didn't go out, or your parents turned it off by accident and you could just continue your game. That was painful, and I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore, because more often than not, your parents would just see it and turn off the console and totally screw you over. Or maybe you didn't have a PlayStation memory card or something like that, and you tried to beat the game in one sitting. You are a hero. You're doing something that today's gamers can't always do for either attention span or time reasons or what have you. Now, moving on over to number 9, if we're talking accessories and peripherals, how about having to untangle a mess of controller cables? Back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, in general, you were just dealing with more wires overall, whether it was cables to hook up the console, or of course, those long, pesky controller wires. Things were just messy, and it was very, very hard to really wrangle everything together. God forbid you had other siblings that also had their own controllers or their own video games, or if you were crazy enough to throw them all in one bin, it would be an absolute mess every single time you went to grab a new controller, because you'd have to spend so much time untangling everything. I actually look back at my skills at untangling. There was a point where I got so good at untangling any controller, any mess. I was so slick, I was so practiced at it, and now I barely use that skill at all in real life because I never really come into contact with that. Oh no, the charging cable for the Xbox controller or the PlayStation controller. It's not as big of a deal as having multiple full controller wires and just a bunch of other crap around your TV. That stuff, coupled with the fact that there were always so many cables around, sometimes you couldn't tell what was plugged in, or you'd accidentally step on it or trip over something and yank something out. You can't have been the only person that would have an entire console be pulled out of like the TV cabinet because somebody walked by and stepped on the controller cable. What a mess that was. I mean, we have a lot of things to complain about with modern gaming, but I'm glad wireless technology has come a long way. Next, over at number 8, this is a silly problem to have, but it definitely happened to some of us. Turning your console on late at night, only to have that blaring startup sound either wake up your siblings or your parents, and then you're in trouble. Because for a lot of us, like maybe we had to be sleeping, for school the next day or whatever. But sometimes you just want to game all night. For me in particular, I remember for some reason out of anything, the sound of the GameCube and the sound of the PlayStation 2, those startup sounds being incredibly blaringly loud. And sometimes you don't notice immediately that your TV volume is turned up too loud until it's too late. The first couple of notes before you lower the volume down of the GameCube jingle were pretty loud. That blaring blur of the PlayStation 2 firing up. That type of thing, to even older consoles, really have gotten us in trouble many times back in the day. It's cheesy, it's hokey to mention, but you know what? It's true. Please prove us right. If any of you have experience or like a story or something of that happening to you, let us know in the comments. Now, next over at number 7, waiting in line for a new video game launch. Now, that still happens occasionally. Sometimes there's a good retail store or a big new game release that will have some sort of celebration in store, but with the rise of digital gaming, many people are just pre-ordering on their console digitally, or just not pre-ordering and just downloading it when they want. Or they're ordering the physical game from Amazon or whatever. We've talked in the past about how video game retail has it rough. I always say support your local mom and pop game store if you have one, because it's not always the easiest for them to make money compared to the giants. But I got sidetracked. Really, it was those long lines for all those big AAA releases. From the early days of game launches to PC releases, even like expansion packs, to, of course, up until the last few Call of Duties, people would line up in front of stores around the block. Oftentimes, that was the best way to get your hands on a copy of a game quick, because if you walked in the next day, it'd probably be sold out. Things have changed over the years, but that was a real fear for a time, and you wanted that game, damn it, so you waited. And sometimes it was freezing cold, or it was raining, or you had to stand next to a really, really annoying guy. That happened to me a lot. I always remember that. But you know what? We do whatever we can to get the game. Am I right? Next, over at number 6, something that's dead is games that span multiple discs. Reaching a point in a game and having to get up, open the console, and put the next disc in. That stuff is long gone. It had a dying gasp with just game sizes being so long for you to install on your console that would have fit on a DVD towards the end of the Xbox 360 era, but there was a time where games wouldn't even span 2 discs. They'd span 3 or 4. Some RPGs back in the day were absolutely massive, and we miss actually that exciting little bit of, ooh, insert the next disc, because you never know what's going to happen. Once you fire that disc up, where are we going to go next? There was some sort of sense of wonder or adventure to even getting up and putting another disc in. I know it sounds stupid now, you had to be there, but yeah, there was just something a little special about it, and although it's dead, we do miss it sometimes. Next, over at number 5, oh man, there was a different way back in the day to really get guides or cheats in video games. It was the simpler times. Small, busted websites like CheatCC or guide websites like gameranx where you'd scroll endlessly through a bunch of text, black text on white screen. Usually the people making the guide would recreate the logo using symbols and characters. It was really cool, but that was all we had. And a lot of times with the way computers worked, where it was like there was one computer in the home, you'd have to pause your game, get up, and walk over to the computer. Now, things are completely different. You get everything on your phone, you access things right on your console, or if you're a PC gamer, it's right in front of you. And while people still make guides on some of those websites, a lot of those websites still work. Most people just get their guides now from one of 1,000 different websites. We miss the earlier, humbler days of cheat websites, guide websites, but we can go even further back to when they didn't even exist. You had to either figure a game out for yourself completely, or hear it from a friend on the playground, or go to the store and buy a physical guide, an actual book. All that stuff now, dead and long gone. Next, over at number 4, fixed camera angles. We've seen this one pop up a lot in our comments and stuff, and a lot of people argue that they are dead, and they celebrate that they are dead. People like the freedom of way more camera angles, the ability to see everything around you in a 3-dimensional space. Yes, sure, of course, but those fixed camera angles had a very specific purpose. If you were a survival horror player, you know specific games like Resident Evil, that was really part of the charm. And some games are kind of keeping that spirit alive, some indie games, some games inspired by old school titles are just keeping those fixed camera angles, but you really don't see them anymore in big mainstream popular games. And most people are glad they're dead. We think they serve a certain purpose sometimes, but even still, if we move separate from that, just better video game camera technology and better indicators. Do you remember in the earlier days of 3D games, how many times you get hit by an enemy that you couldn't see that was directly off screen? Now games allow you to move the camera way more freely, or not even that, just give you really helpful little markers or sound cues on screen to when you know you're going to be attacked by somebody you can't see. Most recently, something like the newer God of War games. You know when an enemy behind you is going to attack you, so the game at least gives you a window. Still, camera angles back in the day used to be a nightmare, and we're glad some of the crappier ones are gone. Now down to number 3, there was a time, and this time is long gone, but when games were broken, they were just broken forever. If you came across a weird glitch or a quirk in your game, well, bug fixes and patches didn't really exist for certain games, specifically home console games, so you had to put up with whatever was in that game. Of course, if you were a little bit crafty or a little bit more technical, there could sometimes be fixes or workarounds, but for the average young player, if there was a weird visual glitch or bug in your game, that was just how it was. On the other hand, the more cynical gamer can argue that games were just released in better states then. They were released more as a full finished product, and now things can be more easily fixed, so why not fly a little closer to the sun? Either way, however you want to look at it, it was a much simpler time where you would just turn on the game and it would be good to go. You wouldn't get stuck waiting for a new patch to download or anything like that. We probably sound like weird old complaining grandpas by now at this point, but hey. Now, down to number 2, we have to talk hardware costs and really availability, specifically around PC gaming. I mean, high-end PCs back in the day were really insanely priced compared to today's gaming rigs, and people will still say that the average gaming PC is still a little bit prohibitively expensive. But back in the earlier days, if you wanted a PC to play like very early World of Warcraft, or even going further back, something like Doom, things were not as accessible. A lot of PCs would run those games, but sometimes you needed extra stuff, or stuff would break. You'd need a new sound card, or a fan would shit out, or really anything. A lot of times, parts were really expensive and not so readily available. You couldn't just run to any old store to grab them. You'd have to go to a specialized hardware or an electronics store and hope they had that exact thing, or maybe even go to almost like a small trade show. There was a place by me, an event space, that every couple of weekends they would hold a big event where manufacturers or companies would set up tables and sell electronic parts for you there, and that's where you had to have to go get them. Not only that, but we also didn't have the resource of so many great websites like Newegg or PC Part Picker that could break down exactly what we needed. If you wanted to get way up in the guts of your PC back in the day, you had to be much smarter and way more versed with computer technology, because it wasn't something that you could just Google or fire up a YouTube video from your favorite neighborhood PC gamer tech guy. Now, that stuff was far more complex. Things have gotten much better now, and we're grateful for that. Now over at number 1, something silly is installing PC games before Steam or the other modern storefronts that make it pretty easy. You basically click a button and then wait a while. Installers and launchers in the 90s and 2000s weren't that bad, to be honest. Most of the time it was fine, but when there was an error, there was an error, and you'd be holding your breath hoping it doesn't happen. You'd be watching that bar hoping that something wouldn't happen that you'd have to really try and fix, because like we said in the previous point, resources and fixes weren't as available. It wasn't easy to get a refund if something just didn't work with your machine, and there was no support page or Steam forums to just hop on to see if other people were having the same issue. Things were often a little bit more obscure, and you just had to hope for the best. Hope your machine was good, hope the game was optimized the best, because if not, you were SOL. And I mean, you probably know what that stands for. So for as many things we complain about in the world of gaming today, as you can tell, things certainly have progressed, and we have developed truly as a species of gamers. Regardless, let's talk about this stuff down in the comments. If you have more examples for us for like a part 2 type video, we'd love to hear it. If you had fun with this video and like what we do, we just upload videos every day talking about games. Clicking the like button's all you gotta do to help us out. We would really appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, just thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.